Hey man,
How's it going?
it's great.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet
Great
you.
to meet you. and you've got an official shirt on.
I do. I had a bunch of stripes. I didn't realize how many striped pillows I owned until Casey told me you can't wear striped pillows.
That's great. Well, man,
yeah.
thanks for flying into Texas.
It's great to be here. It's a quick trip, but I'm super excited that y'all have me out here. And thanks for hosting. It's wonderful to be here.
Gladly.
Yeah.
What are you studying?
Finance.
Finance.
Finance on the pre-dental track.
Finance on the pre-dental track.
The pre-dental's kind of gone at this point. I've finished it out, but I think I'm sticking around more of the finance end now. So
That's good.
yes, sir. What did you study when you were in school?
I studied at UT. I studied graphic design for advertising.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you the designer of the
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing. I was the best we could get in 1985, and then I think when it came to the redesign of the crest several years ago, I think for posterity and historical continuity, they just decided to call me again.
Yeah.
But they could have found much better designers, I assure you.
I think you did a pretty good
Oh,
job.
well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, what is it that was happening in your life and in you that would move you to start Bucks? How did that all come to be?
When coming to college at Bucks was not on my radar at all.
Did you know about it?
I had never heard of it going to Mercer. And so at the time, UGA was the only Bucks chapter in Georgia. I think the Pi chapter, 2019 fall was my freshman year. And so obviously that spring we had COVID, so we got cut short a little bit. But that whole year, even that summer lead up, I had never heard of Bucks. And so coming into sophomore year, I'd already fallen into super great community with a campus ministry.
You connected with the church there?
Yeah, I was getting involved in the church.
Yeah.
And then I remember it was on a trip. We were going actually down in Savannah, Georgia. One of my friends at Mercer had a high school friend that he had introduced me to over the summer. And I remember seeing on social media he was at a Bucks event, and I was like, "What's that?" And so really from that question is kind of led down the train of starting. And I think really what sustained just the initial thought was like, wow, this is seeing how Christ-centered it was. Because I was skeptical at first, and I was looking into it, and I sent an email, I think it was to Mac Farr at the time, who was on national staff, and it's an inquiry, and it's funny because I sent the email, and 3 weeks I didn't get a response. Then I was talking to my friend about it 3 weeks later, and he was like, "Have you checked your spam folder?" And I was like, "No, I haven't." So I actually
because BYX doesn't come up in most email, as safe sender.
Yeah, and so anyways, but that's where it started. But what about for you from at UT, going into college, was Christian Brotherhood something already on your mind? What was stirring in your heart?
I came to Christ a month before I graduated from high school. Wow. So I grew up in a religious family, but not a Christian family. And so when I went to UT Arlington, there was nothing. It was vacant, and I didn't really connect with Christian community. So by the time a year and a half later I transferred to UT, I was really starved. I was just starved as a Christian. So I know some guys that are in Bucks, probably a lot of guys that grew up in the church, healthy youth group, and that sort of thing, and they kind of know what community is all about. But for me, I didn't have any really good experiences. So by the time I arrived at UT, I had a couple of buddies that I went to high school with that were Christians, but I didn't really have that much of a connection. But I knew what my soul needed. And I remember sitting in Jester cafeteria in the dorms, and I was sitting with my good friend, John Edson, and we were having lunch together, and Craig Albert and David Givens came walking around the lunchroom in the cafeteria there at Jester, and they were meeting people that they knew, Christians that they knew, and they came over and they recognized my buddy John and said, "Hey, we're starting a Christian fraternity. The meeting's gonna be next Monday night. Want you to come join it. Would you be interested in coming?" John goes, "Yeah, that sounds great." And I remember kind of with this desperation looking up and going, "Can I come too?" And I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I needed it. And so a week later, 2 weeks, I don't remember exactly what it was, there were 20 some odd guys that were gathered, and we just started. We just started meeting and started trying to kind of figure it out as we went along. But for me, it fulfilled a huge vacancy in my life of Christian community.
Yeah, at least at Mercer, there's no large banner under which Christian men could gather. And so there was though we're like a small school, like undergraduate, like population like 3,500, I mean, I think that we probably had conversations with upwards of 50 guys over that year and a half. I think the thing that drew them was like they all had this gap. Like there was this gap of like a deeper brotherhood, and like you could find it. I mean, you could find brotherhood among men within ministries, but I think like Bucks itself provides such an amazing structure and like holistic structure for that. That's what we found.
When I graduated from UT, I went, Lord called me into ministry, went to seminary, came back, started serving as a college pastor in Austin. And during that time, there were some 40 or 50 recognized Christian campus organizations. And so Bucks, you could think, well, it's just another one of those Christian organizations. But Bucks really stands apart from all of the other organizations because there was no other organization that dealt specifically with men, with Christian men under the banner of the cross, coming together from a diversity of backgrounds and really fulfilling that need. So I agree that it was huge, was huge for me. So what's this founding experience? You're the tip of the spear at Mercer for Bucks. What's this founding experience been like for you?
Yeah, it's definitely stretched me, I'd say. I mean, I didn't really realize that I was kind of I'd never been in that kind of position of leadership. Like I'd served like with, in the youth group and like the student leadership team for my youth group. And, I'd been in some capacities of leadership, but nothing ever this pointed. And I think that like it made me realize, number one, just how dependent you need to be as a leader on Jesus. But also number two, I was kind of a people pleaser. And I think it really squeezed that out of me really quick. This making a decision isn't always popular. And even coming on campus, we had some pushback. And so just like learning to deal with adversity and learning to deal with when people don't like you. And like we're still like trying to respond in a grace-filled and like loving
Welcome
way.
to leadership. Right? But you know what? What's unfortunate, and I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, it's unfortunate that every Bucks chapter only has kind of one start. Because what you're learning, I think, in this start, you're creating, from the dust, and you're following other leaders, and you're learning about your own leadership. That will, God willing, that'll never happen again at Mercer. But there's something the Lord is doing in the middle of that. He's doing a remarkable leadership work in you during this time. And
how would you say that, maybe specifically for you, how did the founding process and even what rooted out of that like prepare you for leadership now?
I think my experience is a lot like your experience. I stepped into a leadership role as president having no idea what I was doing. I didn't grow up in a youth group, so I didn't have any idea of what it meant to lead among Christians. And one of the things I really appreciated about my experience in Bucks, and I think is I can see going on in chapters all over the United States, is that young men are getting to have a safe, guarded and guided place where they can kick the tires of leadership. 100%. They can figure out what it means to learn humility. They can figure out what it means to have pressure of people who don't agree with them. They can figure out what it means. They can be in a safe place to fail, make some poor leadership decisions, have to apologize. Man, I wish I'd done that better. And when I look now, many years later as being a pastor, there have been a lot of formative experiences I've had along the way. Bucks was, in many ways, it was the strike of the match. It was the first ignition of leadership for me in the body of Christ.
So what is like a significant challenge you face like post-college, maybe like in leadership, maybe in church leadership, that maybe like your experience at founding prepared you for, or that Bucks like helped you prepare to lead through?
I would say one of the greatest challenges looking back now in 30 years of life, 40 years of life, is probably would be parenting. And this is what's interesting. The thing about being a parent, and now as a grandparent, you didn't know that, did you? You looked at me and you thought, gosh, you look so young. Maybe be a grandparent. But one of the things about parenting is that all that you've learned and all that has been invested in you comes to bear. And what every Christian man who becomes a husband and then becomes a father is going to discover is they're going to discover at the moment of parenting what they gained or what they missed being invested in them that they have to turn around and give away. Does it make sense?
Perfect sense. Yeah.
And so having a deep, abiding, meaningful investment in your life when you're 20 or 22 really pays dividends for the rest of your life. So I would say to young men like yourself, man, invest, put lots of tools in your toolbox right now, because they're gonna be what you use to reproduce in your own family for a lifetime.
So on the same note, like what are you learning right now? Like what are some of the things, either in leadership, like in your faith?
You know, the lesson that God's teaching me, the lesson I'd leave you with today is this: die spent.
Yeah.
Die spent. You know, Paul says, make the most of every opportunity, for the days are evil. And I think a lot of Christians, and even Christian men who can be somewhat passive, they live carpe manana, seize tomorrow, when I think Jesus calls us to carpe diem, seize today, seize the moment today. My life verse is Acts 20:24. Paul says, for I consider my life worth nothing, if only I may finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given to me, the task of testifying to the gospel of God's grace. Paul says, I don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
I just want to die well. I want to die being spent in the things that God has made me to do. And man, that's what I pray for you, pray for my brothers that are serving, my brothers that are not serving, that are just following. Man, I just pray that we would learn to die very spent.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
man, I'll tell you what, I'm sure proud of you. I'm so thankful for what God's doing in your life, how He's using you at Mercer, and trust that the Lord will continue to build the brotherhood there. And really glad that you and I had an opportunity to meet.
Yeah, wonderful. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for
man.
sitting down.
Great to see you. Great to see you.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
man. God bless you.